On the website, a woman named Karen writes this: I just sold my house, and it's all thanks to St. Joseph and his blessing. I buried the statue only 20 hours before I got my best offer, and now it's sold. And then there was a post that was signed simply anonymous. The person writes, our house was on the market for over 1 year without any offers. I purchased the St. Joseph's kit, followed the directions, recited the prayer, and within 1 day, we had our first offer. 1 month later, we sold. Now, those sound like the kind of testimonies you hear on infomercials, right? About beauty products or perhaps some weight loss product people want you to buy. Maybe you sold your house in the past year. Maybe you know someone who has. Maybe you're a realtor or you have friends who are realtors. Many of us are familiar with this idea that's been floating around for quite a long time, that if you bury a statue of St. Joseph in your yard, your house will sell. And then there's also some kind of craziness about burying it upside down. I have relatives who have done this, and they could be writing one of those testimonials on that website that's selling the statues of St. Joseph that you can purchase in order to sell your house. One of my relatives actually was successful, but the funny part is that when she was getting ready to move out of her house, she couldn't remember where she actually buried the statue, so it's still at that house. At the end of the day, all of this is basically a superstition. It's not something to really believe in, and nobody really knows how this practice actually started. Some believe that it goes back to a saint, André Bessette, a Holy Cross brother in Canada, who at the turn of the 20th century, it said, would take St. Joseph medals and he'd plant them on properties that his monastery wanted to buy. Others say that somehow this became popular in the 1970s. I suspect that for every sale that is successful and attributed to the St. Joseph statue, there were many statues in other properties that were in the ground for months, and those houses eventually sold maybe after several price cuts. Today is the feast of St. Joseph, March the 19th. There are actually 2 feasts that are associated with Joseph today, in which he's honored as the patron of the church throughout the world, and later on May 1st, his feast is as patron of workers. Not long ago, Pope Francis declared that the year 2021 would be observed as the year of St. Joseph, but not in order to help sell houses, although this year has been a pretty huge one for those who are in real estate, especially where we live. Now, the Pope wants us to look to St. Joseph as a model of trust and love and faithfulness, especially in these very challenging times. I suspect that for most of us, any statue that we have of St. Joseph is from our creche set that we bring out at Christmas. This is actually from mine. I have to be honest, I can't remember when I got this. I believe that this is from Spain. Little is actually known about St. Joseph. He's mentioned just a few times in the New Testament. The idea that he was some old man that married a young Mary is just completely not true. There's no basis for that, in fact. He probably was just as young as Mary was. The only significant or most significant mention of Joseph is found in Matthew's Gospel, our Gospel for today. In it, Matthew's Gospel, Joseph, not Mary, is the main character, the protagonist of the story of Jesus' birth. In part, it reads this way: The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary, your wife, into your home. For it is through the Holy Spirit that this child has been conceived in her. She will bear a son. You are to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. When Joseph awoke, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. A very short passage, but I think it's packed with a lot of meaning that we can reflect on every day in all the months ahead. The story is basically about Joseph, who faces this terrible moment of crisis. Mary is pregnant, and the child is not his. He's not the father. So he faces all kinds of shame and humiliation in that culture. But before he acts, he has a dream in which God explains exactly what has happened and what Joseph is to do. That moment of his dream, it reminds us that in the midst of crisis, or when we have to really make an important decision, what we need to do is to step back. We need to find the space, not for sleeping and dreaming, but for listening to God, so that we don't wind up making choices in haste, choices that we will later regret or might have bad consequences. We're told that Joseph, after the dream, takes Mary into his home. He does what is hard, what he doesn't understand, what maybe other people don't understand or will even criticize. He does it not because he has some special skills. He does it because he knows that God will give him the strength to do what is hard. Joseph's choice in that moment is our challenge. How often do we only rely on ourselves? Or we conclude we can't do something because we're afraid, rather than turn to God to help and to guide us. In naming this the year of St. Joseph, Pope Francis writes, St. Joseph reminds us that those who appear hidden or in the shadows can play an incomparable role in the history of salvation. A word of recognition and of gratitude is due to them all. Over this past year, we have learned that lesson, haven't we? Those we had previously not seen or were off to the side in life, like those frontline workers, they have played an incomparable role. But Joseph today reminds us that we, all of us, can and we must play the same role. Hopefully we have moved past a time of thinking that the work of spreading the message of Jesus, the work of being the church, is not simply for someone else. It's everyone's call. It's your call and mine. Joseph reminds us that for the church to remain vibrant and strong, for a parish to continue to thrive, it needs every single member to emerge from the shadows of quarantine and say, here I am, ready to be a disciple, as Joseph was. In the end, it really isn't your house that St. Joseph wants to help sell. He wants you, if you will, to be sold on the truth that we, all of us, must help as he did, bring Jesus into our world.